Most people think of learning as a cognitive process. This is why the domain people link most to learning is the cognitive domain. This is the mental skills domain. In the study of Akar and Andy 2016, it is the domain where you process information, create knowledge, and think. They focus on the cognitive domain, which involves knowledge and the development of intellectual skills. This includes simple skills to recall facts as well as more complex skills such as recognition of patterns and forming of concepts. So what is really cognitive domain? The cognitive domain contains learning skills predominantly related to mental or thinking processes. Learning processes in the cognitive domain include a hierarchy of skills involving processing information, constructing understanding, applying knowledge, solving problems, and conducting research. There are 6 levels of cognitive complexity. We have remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive domain focused on describing levels of attainments rather than process skills and substantially adjusts the manner in which the learner proceeds from one level to the next. The cognitive domain includes skill clusters that organize a complete, concise, and complementary listing of the learning skills most critical for each process. The original levels of cognitive domain by Bloom in 1956 were ordered as follows: knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. So this is the old version of cognitive domain taxonomy of Bloom. So we have a new version of cognitive domain taxonomy. The revised taxonomy of cognitive is based on what we want learners to do, which is more congruent with the nature in the purpose of objectives. On this picture, we see a multiple choice test most often used to assess for remembering. This picture also, we see two learners creating a new idea cooperatively. So this is part of the cognitive domain. Objective, Objectives describe what learners are expected to do, new or different, as a result of instructions. Furthermore, creating new ideas is a higher order cognitive process than evaluating what someone else has created. Hence, the revised taxonomy ranks create higher than evaluate. So, the rank of this is first we have remember, second understanding, third applying, fourth analyze, fifth evaluate, and sixth is create. While the major categories are generally hierarchical, it seems to me that the subcategories are not. So as you can see, this is the first version of cognitive domain taxonomy. We have evaluation, synthesis, analysis, application, comprehension, and knowledge, which was created in 1965. On the other side, it is the new version which was revised in 2001. We have create, we have remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. So this is the 6 levels of Bloom's revised taxonomy. So we will be focusing on the levels of Bloom's taxonomy revised version. Ganun na lang picture, B. So we have the first category or the first level is remembering. So in this part, you recall of So the first categories or levels of cognitive domain is remembering. So recall of previously learned information. So the outcome verbs is we have define, describe, identify, label, match. So the first category or levels of cognitive domain is we have remembering. It is the recalling of previously learned information. So the outcome verbs is we have define, describe, identify, label, match, list, name, outline, recall, recognize, respond, and select. Respond. So the first categories or levels of cognitive domain is remembering. So it is the recalling of previously learned information. The outcome verbs that can be used is define, describe, identify, label, match, list, name, outline, recall, recognize, reproduce, select, and state. So the example for this, for the learning outcome statements, we have first, recite the multiplication table. Match the word with the parts of the picture of a sewing machine. The second level of cognitive domain is we have understanding. It is about comprehending the meaning, translation, and interpretation of instructions. It is also about the state of it is about state. It is also state. The second level of cognitive domain is understanding. So it is about comprehending the meaning, translation, and interpretation of instructions. Student also requires to state a problem in one's own word. So the outcome verbs for this is we have distinguish, estimate, explain, give example, interpret, paraphrase, and summarize. So the example for the learning outcome statements is we have first, explain in one's own words the stages in the life cycle of a butterfly. Second, distinguish among the different geometric figures. So the third level of cognitive domain is applying, using what was learned in the classroom in similar new situations. So the outcome verbs for this is that apply, change, compute, construct, demonstrate, discover, modify, prepare, produce, show, solve, and use. For example, for the learning outcome statements is we have use a mathematical formula to solve an algebra problem. Second, prepare daily menus for 1 week for a family of 6. The fourth level of cognitive domain is we have analyzing. Analyzing, it is about separating materials or concept into component parts to understand the whole. So the outcome verbs for this is that analyze, compare, contrast, diagram, differentiate, distinguish, illustrate, outline, or select. The example for the learning outcome statements is we have observe a classroom and list down things to be improved. Second, differentiate the parts of a tree. So the fifth level of cognitive domain is the evaluating. It is about judging the value of an idea, object, or material. The fifth level of cognitive domain is evaluating. It is about judging the value of an idea, object, or material. The subject verb for this is that compare, conclude, criticize, critique, defend, evaluate, relate, support, and justify. So the example learning outcome statement for this is we have defend a research proposal. Second, select the most effective solution. And the third one is critique a class demonstration. So in the sixth level, which was the last level and the highest level, is we have creating. It is about building a structure or pattern. It can be also the putting parts together. So the subject verb for this is we have categorize, combine, compile, compose, devise, design, plan, organize, revise, rearrange, generate, or modify. So the example for the learning outcome statements is we have compile personal records and documents into a portfolio. Second is write a syllabus for a school subject. Okay, So in remembering, it is about recalling the previous discussed information. So we have remembering previously learned material. It is also the lowest level of learning. It is about listing learned information, remembering terms, methods, facts, concepts, specific terms of information. So the sample activities for this is we have so the samples activity So the sample activities for remembering is we have label, you can do the label. So the sample activities for remembering is that you can do the labeling the parts of a plant, group together all the 4-syllable words, list the freedom included in the Bill of Rights, identify the food group to which each of these foods belong, write definitions to the following words, locate examples of capitalization in the following story, remember of an idea or fact in somewhat the same form in which it was learned, question and answer sessions, workbook or worksheets, program instruction, or remember things read, heard, or saw. Comprehension. So in understanding, it is about the explaining and comprehension. So it is about the ability to grasp the meaning of material. It can be also it is also So in understanding, it is about explaining in the comprehension of the information. It is the ability to grasp the meaning of material. It can be also the communication of an idea, explaining ideas, or summarizing material, or understanding the facts and principles. So the sample activities for understanding is we have give reasons for the energy crisis. So you can also do the explaining why we have bus safety rules, outline the steps necessary for an idea to become a law, restate the reasons for weather changes, summarize the story, or what were the underlying factors that contributed to the Revolutionary War. In application, it is about using ideas, applying concepts and principles to new situations, applying laws and theories to practical situations, solving of mathematical problems, constructing charts and graphs, demonstrating correct usage of a method or procedure, applying rules, methods, concepts, principles, laws, and theories. You can also it also requires higher level of understanding than comprehension. So these are the activities you can do. Put this information in graph form. Organize the forms of pollution from most damaging to least damaging. Sketch a picture that relates your feelings of recess. Using knowledge from various areas to find solutions to problem, applying ideas to new or unusual situations, simulation activities, or role-playing or role reversal. In analysis, we have the breaking down of information or the knowledge that we gain. So, breaking material down into component parts, understanding the organizational structure, analyze of relationship between parts, recognition of organizational principles involved, understanding both the context and the structural form, and analyzing the elements. So the sample activities you can do is this. Simplify the ballet to its basic moves. Inspect a house for poor workmanship. Observe a painting to uncover as many principles of art as possible. Read a non-fiction book. Divide the book into its parts. Tell why the parts were placed in the order they were. Look into the forces that might cause pressure for our legislators. Inspect two presidential speeches. Compare and contrast them in writing. Uncovering unique characteristics. Distinguishing between facts and inferences. Evaluating the relevance of data, recognizing logical fallacies in reasoning, recognizing unstated assumptions, or analyzing the organizational structure of work. So you can do one of these activities in your classroom or in your students. Hayop man. So the fifth level is synthesis. It is about forming new whole. So the fifth level is synthesis. So its description is forming a new whole. So putting parts together in a new form, formulating new patterns or structures, abstract relationships, communicating an idea in a unique way. proposing a new set of operations, creating new or original things, and take things and pattern them in a new way. So sample activities for this is we have create a new song for the melody of Mary Had a Little Lamb, combine elements of drama, music, and dance into a stage presentation, develop a plan for your school to save money, create a model of a new game that combines thinking, memory, and chance equally. Reorganize a chapter unit from your textbook the way you think it should be. Find an unusual way to communicate the story of a book you have read, or formulate positive changes that would improve learning in your school. And the last one is we have evaluation. So it is about the ability to judge the value of material. Use of defined criteria for judgments, value judgments based on clearly defined criteria, use of cognitive or affective thinking together. So sample activities for the last part of cognitive domain is we have decide which person would be best fill a position, rank the principles of good sportsmanship in order of importance to you. Sample activities for the last part of cognitive domain is we have decide which person would best fill a position. Sample activities for the last part of cognitive domain is we have decide which person would best fill a position, rank the principles of good sportsmanship in order of importance to you, decide which proposed plan is the best, read two different accounts of an incident, decide which story is most logical in its portrayal, judge the posters or murals your class has just constructed, justify the actions of your favorite historical figure, determine the necessary criteria for a good resource, summarize the involvements you have with your class this year, or making judgments about data or ideas based on either internal or external situations. There. The five the five type cat the five type top the I type the five top categories is the understand, apply, the five top the five top categories understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create might also be considered deep learning, while remember might be considered more congruent with surface learning. If you want your learners to identify the salient information, educators and teachers often make the mistake of assuming that those who can remember facts can be Educators and teachers often make the mistake of assuming that those who can remember facts can then also complete those more important higher order tasks. We often fall into this trap because people who can analyze, evaluate, and create, or the higher order learning tasks, can also remember the details and facts. No, that is a logical fallacy and an empirical delusion. Just because learners can remember, especially if they can only recognize as in multiple choice questions, does not mean that they can complete higher order tasks such as analyzing or evaluating. Educators and teachers often make the mistake of assuming that those who can remember facts can then also complete those most important higher order tasks. We often fall into this trap because people who can analyze, evaluate, and create or the higher order learning tasks can also remember the details and facts. No, that is a big no. That is a logical fallacy and an empirical delusion. Just because learners can remember, especially if they can only recognize as in multiple choice questions, it does not mean that they can complete higher order tasks such as analyzing or evaluating. If you want If you want your learners to identify the salient information in a case or a problem or task, to organize them and then to explain them how they are possibly related to you. If you want your learners to identify the salient information in a patient case, to organize them, and then to explain how they are possibly related to you, are asking them to analyze. If you want your learners to produce a care or treatment plan for a new patient, then you are asking them to create. If you are asking them about the definitions either in a multiple choice item format or in a short answer format, you are asking them to remember. An example for this, a surgeon knows anatomy, but just knowing anatomy does not make one a surgeon. A strong course, module, or program will have a range of objectives, but we favor more expectations at the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive domain. It is about the teaching and assessment. Tingnan niyo, pilon. Cognitive domain, it aims to develop the mental skills and the acquisition of knowledge of the individual. The higher the level, the presumably more complex mental operation is required. Higher levels are not necessarily more desirable than lower levels because one cannot achieve the higher levels without an ability to use the lower levels. That would be all. Thank you, and I hope you learned something from my topic. This